Yes, hi, Anna.
Hi, Charlene.
I want to say thank you for being on my show. Now, I'm Anna Zuckerman Vdovenko.
That's right. You said it right.
I just want to say thank you for being on my show. Now, I just want to bring on, this is fascinating because I love taking pictures. You know, I like taking the pictures, but I always want to know what's going on behind the scenes. But I want you to just tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, like how you got started as well.
Well, I really didn't plan on becoming a photographer.
Really? You're so professional at it.
But I did study art in school.
Oh, okay.
I went to college, and I didn't really study art in college, but afterwards I studied art, and everybody said the photography classes were the worst, and don't take any photography classes.
Wow.
So I thought that must be something I should avoid at all costs.
Okay.
And I did. But one day I was invited to go on a beautiful trip to Antarctica.
Oh, wow.
And my brothers, they're photographers, and they gave me all their old equipment.
Okay.
And I got their hand-me-downs and took it with me to Antarctica. And voila, I became a photographer.
Wow, so it looked like it runs in the family. You saying your brothers,
Yes.
so okay.
Yes, they are technical photographers, so they do museum work.
Okay.
But their cameras work great in Antarctica, and I started bartering my photos for trips. And my first work was on ships, and I worked on ships as an expedition and wildlife photographer for about 15 years.
Wow, so it's like 15 years been on a ship?
On a ship.
That's amazing. Like, how did all of that started?
Well, it just started because I fell in love with travel and photography, and I thought, what better way to see the world than to use the idea of trading photos for trips. And then eventually I said I wanted to get paid, and I wanted to become an expedition coordinator on the ship as well as a photographer.
Now, when you say that, what's the difference of what you do?
What I started out with was more like I come on board and I take photos, and I give them 20% of my photos.
Now, you're taking photos of who? The people that's coming on the ship?
I mostly did the beauty shots of all the places where we went.
Oh, okay.
But I also took pictures of the passengers, and they used them for advertising and promotion.
Oh, nice.
And when you think in an entrepreneurial way, you have to think about how you can advance yourself in your career. And while I was on the ship, I knew I had my foot in the door.
Wow.
And I really wanted to keep traveling and working for this company. So I proposed that we start something called onboard sales. And I really didn't know how to run it. I just had this idea that if we did slideshows of all our previous trips, we could have our captive audience sign up for more trips, and that worked.
It worked? Wow, you came up with that. That's interesting.
And so we did onboard sales using photography, and we promoted our trips that way.
Okay.
So that was another way that I used photography I tried to make myself indispensable to the company so that they keep hiring me. And eventually we had a whole team of people that we worked with together.
Wow. So that must be interesting because you actually have to stay on the ship, correct?
Yes.
So there's no destination where you can like go home and...
Well, you stay on the ship for at least 3 or 4 months, and then if you want to, you can go home for a little while, edit your photos, and then get back on the ship again. So I would travel, I guess it was mostly like 8 months of the year I'd be on a ship. And we went all over the world, but we went to very remote locations. So my first trip was Antarctica.
Okay.
And then Indonesia.
Okay. So I know you have a picture of the Antarctica trip, right?
Yeah,
so
So I brought this because this is where my love of photography began. And this is actually in the subantarctic islands of South Georgia, and those are king penguins. It's a very large king penguin colony, and we were the only people there that day. Very few people really get to go there. But now the expedition tourism industry is much bigger than it was when I began.
Okay.
So people have to register before they make landings with their ships.
Now this is amazing. Now this actually, they are real.
Yeah, they're real, and they're actually the little brown ones, they are the babies, and they look pretty big, but they're losing their down, and soon they'll look like their parents, which have all the color.
Wow.
And king penguins are very colorful. Emperor penguins are a little bit bigger, and they're found on the Antarctic continent. So this is on one of the subantarctic islands.
Wow. Now this is amazing because I'm like, oh my goodness, looking at all of those penguins. I think I would be kind of scared.
I look very tired, I think, there in that picture.
Oh, wow.
I look very bedraggled, but there were days where, you know, it would be very cold and you'd have to go out there. And also I helped guide the tourists to the places where we were going.
Wow.
So I wasn't just taking pictures for the company, I also was responsible helping the passengers to get on shore and make sure they were safe. And I had a team of people that worked with me. We all worked and coordinated everything for the passengers.
So you say you did for 15 years, so you must have seen the whole world.
Well, I'll say I haven't seen the whole world, but I've seen a lot of remote locations in the world, because the companies that I work for, they prided themselves in going to very remote areas.
Okay.
So the Antarctic being one, the geographic North Pole by nuclear-powered icebreaker was another. I did that many times. I think I did the North Pole 13 times.
Oh my goodness.
And each time it was interesting and fun. And we would break ice, sea ice, on an icebreaker to get there.
Wow.
And had to have a lot of trust in the officers and crew that were responsible for our safety.
Wow. Now, what would you say, like, one of the best places you have been?
I guess almost everybody would say Antarctica is the best because it's just so beautiful.
Okay.
The icebergs are so beautiful, and you can't even imagine how blue they are, and the colors and the shapes. They're just, it's never-ending beauty there.
Okay. And like one of the best works you think you have done, because I know you actually transitioned from doing what you was that different than what you're doing now. What's the difference?
Yes. Well, for many years I stopped doing photography because I became a mother.
Okay.
And I decided I had to leave my itinerant life behind, and that that was a wonderful season in my life, but I wanted to stop all that and become a mom.
Okay. Now, what would you were doing? You said what types of photography?
So
what
that
is
was
called?
that was adventure travel photography.
Adventure travel.
And photography for specifically to promote tourism.
Okay.
And using photos of wildlife and landscapes, and also the passengers.
Okay.
And so that was very specific that way, and I never photographed people on shore in normal locations. But one day I picked up a camera again after, I would say, maybe 10 years of not taking pictures and raising my family. And I began to photograph people's faces, and then I got excited all over again because I realized
this
that
is your passion.
Well, it's not just the photography, it's that a face is the ultimate landscape.
Okay.
And it's the ultimate expedition, because when you're doing a portrait of someone, you are really bringing out something that is unspeakable and ineffable about them, the soul of the person. Most photographers feel this way. It comes through the face and the eyes. So if you can capture that, then you've done your job. And I like to make people happy with their photos. I don't want to ever have a customer who's unhappy with their portrait or their headshot.
Like when you did mine.
I hope I made you happy.
You did. It was just awesome. I'm glad I chose you. It was great.
Well, one person told me that I talked to recently, a photographer. She took a class with a very famous photographer one time, and the one thing she remembered from the class was that he said, if you want to be a good photographer, you have to first become a good person. And what he meant by that was that people who sit before your lens, they feel your attitude. And if they feel that you're voting for them, you're rooting for them, you want them to be their highest self, then they'll relax and they'll pose in a way that's natural and that they feel proud of. So I do a lot of young people that are actors and actresses. And that's a very vulnerable time in someone's life when they're just getting started. And I feel like it's a sacred duty to make sure that they feel really good about themselves during the session and afterwards as well. And I don't ever let anyone see a photo that doesn't make them look their best.
Oh,
I
wow.
throw them all out, so no one gets to see those shots. Only I do, and I know that, oh, they wouldn't like that, or that one, the angle isn't the best. So
you just show them their best, and
Yeah.
that works mostly.
and I think it makes people feel really good inside.
Wow. Now, I know you have a website and you talked about craft innovation. What is that? What does that mean? Is it?
Well, just to be very innovative, if people are starting out in a business or trying to build a business, it's very important to be innovative in any way you think or any new angle that you can follow to get people to know what you're all about and to want to hire you to do work for them.
Right.
So I have a lot of different ways that I reach out to the public and
Okay.
I find clients.
And what examples do you have? I know how I met you, but you could just talk about that a little.
Yeah, so, well, one way is to make sure that you have a good presence on social media and that you share images with people that people would say, oh, that's beautiful. I would like to have photos of that done for my family or
Right.
my child or my budding young actress or actor, or if they're an actor themselves, they may feel that this is the type of work they like. There are many good photographers out there.
Right. So what is when I actually met you, I went through a lot of people, and I was looking at photos. What attracted me to you is that your diversity. You know, you went out and you did something different and unique, whereas some people was having the same photos.
Yes.
You did different stuff with people with costumes and stuff like that. Like you said, you're doing a lot of theater work. So that actually showed that in your photos.
Well, the thing is, I think it's how my brain works. I can never do the same thing. I can't really repeat what I did
that's
before.
what I love.
And so every photo really truly looks different. And every pose that somebody does, it's a different costume, it's a different outfit, it's a different lighting. And I like to take people not just in the studio, but I like to take them out on location.
Right.
And every time we seem to find a new place.
And that's amazing too. You have a lot of clients, and you have to take them to different locations, which is interesting. Now, what are one of the bizarre things you have done, the location-wise? Because how far do you travel as well?
Well, I'm willing to travel anywhere that somebody wants to go.
Wow.
within reason. But I think, it's funny because I live in Simsbury, and lately there's been a lot of bears out and about in Simsbury. So now when I travel with people and we go on location, I always bring an air horn just in case because I worry about running into a bear when
they
we're
want to be
out
in the photos. That's why they did it. They want to be in the photos. So they're like, oh yeah.
And in my work in the Arctic, we were always afraid of polar bears because we would get out on the sea ice and we would see polar bears and have to be called straight back onto the ship. We'd run up the gangway if there was any kind of a...
Now, have you seen any polar bears?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So what do they do when you see
Well,
them?
they just come towards the ship, and they're very curious, and if they smell food, they're very hungry, and they want to eat. And so it's very important to not play around with that kind of an animal. You have to respect their strength and their prowess, their power.
Right, exactly. So what would you recommend if somebody's like, oh, you know what, I like for taking pictures too. I would like to get a more deep understanding of how to take pictures because I like taking pictures myself, and I bought a camera. I don't even know how to use it. But I just, always having problems with, I know you talked about the lighting and all of that.
Right.
If somebody actually want to go into this field, what do you recommend for them?
Well, I think the most important thing is to practice.
Practice.
And to practice when you're not
Practice
under...
is the key.
Yes, and to
Anything.
experiment. And I experimented so many times with my camera,
Right.
and I'm still experimenting. I'm still learning new things, and every time I get a new piece of equipment, I have to learn all over again. For example, I just got a silent camera. It's
Wow,
a
what is
mirrorless
that?
camera. It's not this one, but it's built by Nikon, and it's a new kind of high-fangled new thing.
Wow.
And
so how many cameras like do you own?
I have 3 Nikons and I have 1 Canon.
Wow.
And the new Nikon is tricky, very tricky. It's not easy to use, but the brilliant thing about it is you can take it into a theater and it makes no noise. You can, it's mirrorless, so it doesn't have the shutter release sound. You can set it so that it'll make the shutter release sound just so you know when you've taken a picture.
Right.
But if you need it to be silent, then it's completely silent. So you can go to a show, and I love doing theater, and I think it's so wonderful to be able to do that because with a good lighting designer,
Right.
all of that part is taken care of for you, and all you have to do is just capture the people on stage in the right moment to get a great photo because the lighting is already designed.
Oh, wow.
And so when you go into a theater, it's very disruptive to have the loud noise. Or if you go to a dance show, I do a lot of dance concerts too.
Okay.
And I always, in the past, had to go to the dress rehearsal, but I could never really shoot at the real show because of the sound.
Right.
Now I can actually shoot at the real show.
Okay, because what I'm thinking is that, you know, when you're taking pictures, people are in motion, and then, you know, like if I take a picture, you'll see them like triple time because it's blurry because they're in motion. How do you work with
Well,
that?
the key to that is all in the f-stop. So if your f-stop is wide open, so it's a low number, in this case, this one can open up to 2.8. If you have that ability, then you can freeze the motion.
Oh, wow.
And the wider open you have your aperture, the faster you can shoot. And if the shutter goes fast, you can freeze the moment.
Oh, nice.
But if you want movement and you want to show a blur, like some photographers actually want that for a waterfall because they like the look of water coming down and it looking blurry,
Okay.
then they would shoot more slow, and that would be your shutter speed. And so the slower it is, the more blur you get.
Oh, the slow it is, so you want it to be fast so you can get that freeze moment.
Yeah,
which is
and
the-
most people want the freeze for most things. You don't
Right.
really want most things to be blurry. But
Okay.
some artistic photographers like the blur for
Yeah.
certain things.
Okay. And then you like more of the, I guess, the freeze.
Yeah,
Right.
and also if you're doing sports photography as well, and I sometimes do sports, and it's great to get that moment where things are just frozen and people are, for example, I do ice skating photography.
Oh, nice. That
And
sounds interesting.
I sometimes go to New York City and I get to photograph a lot of the Olympic athletes as they're
Wow.
performing and they're doing shows in New York. And I met a lot of them because our rink in Simsbury in the past had a lot of Olympians. And
Oh, nice.
when they found out I could take pictures, they started enlisting my support to do shows for them.
Okay.
And so that's very exciting when you can get an Olympic athlete making a jump in the air and you can freeze them in motion.
Exactly. That is beautiful. I always like to see, I always see the one of Michael Jordan. So that's interesting that you can actually capture that. Now, when you talk about the camera itself, like, there's like so many different gadgets on here. You're like, where do you start?
Yeah, well, you know, you just kind of have to start with the basics, which is, you know, just getting a good exposure. And
How you get that? Because sometimes when I take pictures, it comes out dark.
oh, I can explain why. The reason is because a camera is trying to average the light for what they say is 18% gray.
Okay.
So if you've ever seen a gray card that's 18% gray, a lot of people, photographers and even, you know, people who have cameras that are film cameras, they would have a camera that has, and they will put a card out and they will take a photo of that card. And if the card looks about right, then you have the right exposure. But what happens is if you have something that's very dark, like for example...
Like, what about if you're outside and it's nighttime? How does that work?
Well, then you'd have to do a wide open aperture because you have to let in a lot of light.
Right.
But if you're looking at, for example, a volcanic landscape that's black. If you take a picture of it on the program mode, it will come out too light. So what you have to do is you have to actually cut out some of the light coming in by underexposing. And you do that by playing with the exposure compensation dial. Most cameras have that, and you just go to the -1 or -2, and then you look and you see your result and you decide, oh, that's the right result, I'll shoot more like that.
But you have the flash on as well, like you have the flash.
Sometimes you can use the flash. A lot of photographers lately, the trend is to go with natural light.
Now, where's the light on here? I don't see any light.
Well, this one does actually have a pop-up flash,
Okay.
which is a fill flash.
And this is enough?
And it's enough for a portrait, but I have a big flash.
Right. But
That
if someone is at night, would this suffice, or you would need the big flash?
it probably would be enough to get somebody close up, but it's even better if you can bring a light along with you and shine the light. And there's a lot of wonderful portable lights that aren't very expensive, and you can also shine the light on the person
Okay.
and expose for the person. And what a lot of photographers do is they'll also take a photo of the backdrop of where somebody is, let's say it's city lights, and then they will composite the two exposures together.
Oh, so they'll take two different photos and then combine them into one?
Yes.
Oh, that's
So
nice.
the whole world of computer and editing is a whole nother part of photography that I had to learn, and that everyone pretty much really ought to learn, because it gives you so much control
Right.
over the camera. And if you have a photo that's too dark, you can lighten it to a certain extent in the camera. Or if you have something where the light is
Too light.
it's too light, of course you can darken it. But what you see a lot in theater is that they have very complicated combinations of lights that are
Okay.
overhead, that people are lit.
Right.
And those lights, they throw the camera off. And so what you get is a red shift usually. So when you look at your results, it's too red. So then when you put the photos into a program, you need to change it to be more green and more blue and less red. And that's how you can make it look the way your eye saw it.
Wow. That sounds too complicated.
It's very easy once you get the hang of it. You know, it just takes a little bit of know-how, and I'm still learning. It's endless.
That's the thing. It's so amazing. You look at a camera, you're saying, oh, this seems like it's easy to learn. But then, you know, people study cameras for years, 10, 15 years, and you're like, wow, you still, like you say, you're still learning.
I think it's really important for photographers to talk to each other. And what I've noticed is some people who are professional photographers don't want to share their information.
So do you have like a photographer group?
I don't really have a photographer group, but I do have friends that are willing to talk to me about their work and share their ideas with me. And I'm
Okay.
so appreciative,
Yeah, that's
because
great.
for all the people that I know that do, there are some that keep their cards close. They don't want to
Exactly.
tell
It's that
you.
competition.
Yeah,
like,
they
you're
don't
gonna
want to tell
see
you
my
their
clients.
secrets.
Yeah.
But I make a point of telling all my secrets to people, because I figure, you know, what goes around comes around, and that people will share with me as I share with them. And I have found photographers that like to dialogue about their work and how they've accomplished things. And there's a wonderful camaraderie that takes place when you do share. And when I first was on the ship working, one of the ways I became a better photographer is because we always had professional photographers that would come on board the ship to take photos for their work, and wildlife photographers especially.
Okay.
And I would go up to them and I'd have my camera and I'd say, well, what are you doing?
But that sounds great. I'm glad you came on the show. You know, it's very informative. I mean, it's just 30 minutes, and I know it's like I know maybe 2% about, but it's good to know stuff like that about the camera. So it's good. So if anybody want to contact you, what is your information?
Well, they can find me on Facebook. That's
nice.
Friend me on Facebook.
Find me on Facebook.
Yeah,
That's
find
nice.
me on Facebook.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, because I do get a lot of people that way.
Okay. Well, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you, Charlene.
Okay, yep, and Facebook, and it's under what? Anna
Zuckerman Vdovenko.
Vdovenko.
Yeah.
Okay.